Oh, it was a very large, because what we have to remember when we're talking about the 20s and we're talking about coming on up, we know we had Marcus Garvey. He was very proactive in waking the people up, as we say, waking them up, making them conscious of their having the ability to do certain things. And he said you didn't have to, per se, wait on the European to give you a handout. In fact, you could do all those things yourself, because we were the real skilled labor in the country. Because you got to realize the Europeans had slaves working for such a long time, they didn't have to do no work. So they weren't skilled labor at all. So what happened, you had an exodus from the south to the north, because skilled guy Henry Ford were giving people, he wasn't, I don't know if he was racist, not no, he wasn't discriminating against who
Worked in
for
his
him.
factory. Yeah.
Right, as far as that, fair days, he has a saying, fair days work.
Wage for a fair day's work.
And so a lot of people out of the South started making their way up to the North for their employment. So not only up to the North, they came by way of train, and we know that, came way of train and came to various cities. I know Chicago, New York, Detroit, probably, and it was a few other northern cities. So the Prophet Noble Drew Ali was letting our people know that we should not identify ourselves as Negroes, colored folks, black people, Ethiopians, because those names had negative connotations attached to them, because they had no national decent flag or national decent origin attached to it. Nothing like that. No ethnicity really attached to it. Negroes were American born. Coloreds were American born and bred. So when you're talking about Negroes, colored folks, anytime you get into the color game, that's white supremacy. White supremacy was existing here in America, because we know throughout the world you always had, your various classes of people. You always had the upper class and lower class for the most part. And somebody had to actually execute that on people. And I find it very interesting since this is poor people were poor people. At one point, poor people were poor people, just like in Europe, Great Britain. Poor people were poor people. What they came up with the color game for is to divide the poor and say you got different classes of poor people. You got the so-called European class. Now it's another level. It's like the basement level. These Negroes is in the basement level. Yeah, they poor with you. They live next door to you, but you entitled to a certain white privilege here in America, because you had the poor in line going against the rich. Poor was poor. So it didn't have nothing to do with the color. So once we introduced the color game, we introduced white supremacy. White supremacy, as most people know, have you trying to separate by color. Red, you the black, you brown, so forth and so on. Prophet Noble Drew Ali did not want us to fall into that narrative, so he let us know that we were descendants of Moroccans and actually born in America. And that Prophet Noble Drew Ali spoke about making us better citizens, not slaves to America, but better citizens here in America, because there was a certain narrative about the so-called black man here in America, a certain narrative. He was shiftless, he was lazy, so forth and so on. It's kind of ironic that he was shiftless, lazy, and all that, but he was good enough to be used as slaves for over 400 years. He did good work then. But now all of a sudden he's shiftless, lazy, good for nothing. Yeah, he's good for nothing if you got to pay him. So when you didn't have to pay him, he was good for everything,
And for those who just, the Moorish Science Temple is not a separatist. You're citizens of where Morocco and the United States. So it's not like an
American, no. Not at all. That's why the Prophet said we are Moorish Americans. And in fact, in the questionnaire, this is the questionnaire. This was given to us by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. It's called the Quran Questions for Moorish Children. It's 101 questions in here. And in here, it states, it gives the layout so people wouldn't get confused. And this went all the way back to during the time of the Prophet. In fact, it states this, it says, who was the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America? Noble Drew Ali. What year was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? 1913 AD. What's your nationality? Not your color. What's your nationality? Moorish American. What is his nationality? Speaking in reference to Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Moorish American. It says, why are we Moorish American? Because we're descendants of Moroccans and born in America. That's why. For what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded? For the uplifting of fallen humanity. It says, how did the Prophet begin to uplift the Moorish Americans? By teaching them to be themselves. And giving you that overview, that outlay. No, it's not separate in America. We are part of the American fabric.
That's right. And is this why you have both flags?
Oh, both flags are to be in all temples.